Today is January the 26th of 2022. I'm Dan Rogers, the Potter County GOP Chair, and today I'm here with Todd Hatter, who's running for the 181st District Court. Todd, welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Pleased to be here.
Let's start off by telling the voters a little bit about your background and where you grew up, and then we'll go into why you're running for the judge for the 181st Court.
Thank you. I'm a native Texan, born in Dumas, Texas, a ding-dong daddy from Dumas. My father is Dan Hatter. He had Hatter's Farms and Hatter Spraying Service. Was raised farming and ranching and assisting my dad in our crop dusting operation for the panhandle farmers. I mean, all across the Texas panhandle, we would be spraying crops either for weeds or pests. We had a welding shop on North Dumas Avenue. So I was exposed to quite a lot between the farming, the ranching, and when I say ranching, we had registered quarter horses, we had registered Herefords, slaughtered our own pigs, butchered our own cattle. I pulled a calf, I planted seed. We grew primarily for crops the corn, wheat, milo were our three main crops, and mostly wheat and maize. But it's a hard life. It's a lot of risk involved. Probably the most frustrating thing was you work for months and months, and then maybe just before harvest you have hailstorm or windstorm that puts your crop on the ground, and you just try to save for that rainy day so that you can survive another year, and you play the odds year after year. But it's a good life. It's a hard life. I think it instills character in an individual. Farmers and ranchers, it's been my experience, are generally speaking hardworking, good people.
Yeah, they just have a different way of looking at things.
And they help each other.
Yeah.
It's neighbors helping neighbors. And if somebody's cattle get out, they're not generally running down suing each other or getting into fights. They help each other, round each other's cattle up and get them back in and loan them a cowboy if they need it,
Sure. Yeah, that's the way it ought to be.
It should.
So why do you want to run for the 181st District Judge?
Since I was a child, people have called me the Mad Hatter. So it's a nickname that I took on early on. I don't get mad often, but I'm quite frustrated. And I'm frustrated since I was a police officer. I wanted to do good. I wanted to be a public servant. I wanted to make a safe community. I wanted to make a difference for my fellow man, woman, children, a safe community. I felt like as a police officer, I couldn't make a big enough difference. My desire was to go to law school. As I went to law school, I didn't know what kind of lawyer I necessarily wanted to be, but criminal law was my background, having been in law enforcement for over 6 years. As I got licensed, I went to work for Oklahoma County Public Defender's Office. They threw me a felony case docket of about 95 cases of folks facing potential life sentences there in Oklahoma City. As you practice in front of different judges, especially as a new lawyer, it sometimes becomes challenging because you think there's an ideal, a perfect way that things should be, and you go into the courtroom knowing that you're right on an issue, and you run across a stubborn judge, maybe a judge that may not even want to rule on an objection or a motion. And one of the hard lessons that a new lawyer has to learn is you cannot expect a judge to rule in your favor. You can only expect them to rule. And whether you like the man or the woman that's wearing that robe, you must always respect the robe. You should respect the position and the authority that's been bestowed upon that position. But over my course of more than 400 trials, practicing in front of more than 50 judges, keep in mind, I don't mean 400 cases. I'm talking 400 trials. If we talked about the number of cases, it's probably in the thousands. But through that experience, I've seen good judges and I've seen bad ones. Nobody likes the feeling when you're up against an opposing party and the judge decides to take a brief recess. And during that recess, turns to opposing counsel and says, "Oh, could I see you in my chambers?" And you're watching your opponent go into chambers and the judge giving you assurance that, oh, this is totally unrelated. 15, 20 minutes later, you find yourself back in that courtroom and the judge rules against you. You don't know what happened in the privacy of the chambers, but you walk out of the courtroom feeling like there was a terrible injustice that just happened. When you're trying to present an argument to a jury on something that you know should be admitted and allowed for the jury to hear, such as the description of a crime scene, you're asking that police officer on the stand, officer, describe for the jury what the front of that business, that crime scene, describe what it looked like. The prosecutor says, objection, relevance. And the judge says, sustained. And you think to yourself, how is the appearance of the crime scene not relevant? Why does the state's attorney not want this jury, these 12 men and women, to hear about how many cameras there were or what the front of the business looked like? And as an attorney, as an officer of the court, your hands are kind of tied. There's courtroom protocol. There's right and wrong ways of doing things. If all judges agreed, you would not have a need for appellate courts and the oversight of your trial courts. But the reality is, as a practicing attorney, you get in there and you do the best job you can. You adhere to the rules of evidence, the rules of procedure. You follow the law. You fight for your clients' rights, whether we're talking property rights, their personal liberties, their freedom, maybe their life in a capital case. But you do your best. You try to do that with ethics and morality and try to uphold the highest standards because you don't want to bring dishonor upon the profession. You want the public to trust the court system. You don't want people in the alleys taking matters into their own hands with knives or guns. We have courts for a reason. It should be a safe and professional setting to be able to bring your disputes, whether they're civil, family law, criminal law, and have those matters heard. And through that practice in front of more than 50 judges, I became frustrated. Just as a police officer, you can't make a big enough difference. You want to do more good for your neighborhood, for your community. As a lawyer, your hands are tied when you run up against bad judges. You know, a judge is supposed to be like a referee when you have a jury. A judge is supposed to rule on matters of law, questions of law. The jury is supposed to decide the facts. When you have a judge that oversteps their boundaries and gives the appearance in the presence of the jury that one side's right and the other side's wrong, that a man or a woman that's presumed innocent is guilty and not allowed to present their defense or question, challenge the state's witnesses, whoever they may be, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a lay person, then that person that's accused and has an absolute right to a fair trial, they don't get it. And you never know how much the judge's actions impacted the jury's ultimate decision. But it's frustration. You get tired of seeing 2 or 3 people go in and conference with one judge. It's like you're not a member of the club. I don't go out and play golf. Nothing against those that do. I don't go out to the bars drinking. I'm a family man. I go home to my wife and my 4 kids. I don't have a bunch of political connections, Dan. But I was raised knowing right from wrong. And just as I took an oath when I pinned on my badge as a police officer, and took an oath as I became licensed in Oklahoma, and took another oath when I became licensed in the state of Texas, that oath really meant something to me. When I stood in front of a district judge and raised that hand and were saying those words and that oath really resonated in me. And it meant something. It wasn't just a routine. It meant something. And so whatever job I was doing, whether it was an attorney, whether it was a police officer, Dad always said, whatever you do, try to be good at it. Give it your best. Work hard. Good Lord above has a plan for all of us, is my opinion. And we don't always know what that plan is or even understand the plan, maybe. But I'm frustrated. And I know that some courts especially, can do better than what they do. The people deserve better. And that's what I want to do. I want to create an environment. You can't fix all problems. You can't fix all courts. But I can fix one of them. And I'm running for the 181st District Court for Potter and Randall County because I want to fix that court. I want to give that court the experience of a person that has the kind of experience that I have. I'm old enough to have learned life's lessons. I'm young enough to remember what those lessons were. Experience is very important. I don't need some politician to put their name on my candidacy. I don't want to be qualified by a politician. I don't seek big money donors. I don't go to big law firms and try to get a bunch of money out of them. I don't want that. I don't want to be owing to anybody. I want to be able to receive parties of whatever kind of case into that courtroom, if elected. Be patient, because I've seen judges that aren't patient. I've seen judges get up and walk off the bench while you're trying to talk to them. And to me, that brings disgrace and dishonor to the bench. I believe that it's very important that a judge maintain the appearance of professionalism and neutrality. And remember always that they are a public servant. They serve at the pleasure of the people that elected them and put them into that office. And they can be removed just that quick as well. And if all we needed was an appointment or a referral or, a politician signing on, recommending you, well, we wouldn't have any need for elections. We could just, whoever's current politicians, keep appointing and putting in other politicians. And it would be a vicious cycle of who knows who works with who. And no one except those within the political ring, the politics, could get their fair trial, if you want to call that a fair trial. The public deserves better. I want to be better. I want to be that public servant. I want to be patient and give folks a place they can come, be treated with respect and professionalism. Those suffering from mental illness or mental impairment can receive help. Have trained staff to recognize early those signs and symptoms of mental health-related issues. Have connections within the community of health professionals ready and willing to help deal with those people so that their rights can be preserved and so that the system is protected, the public is protected. Those individuals who are at a disadvantage for one reason or another are also protected, even if it's from themselves. But I want people to know that they don't have to go to a particular law firm. They don't have to worry about hiring one lawyer from a certain place. You can just pick a lawyer that you feel good right here. You know that lawyer returns your phone calls. That lawyer seems to care about your case. And that lawyer will be good enough because you don't have to worry about the golfing or the parties or how much money somebody has or who they're politically connected to. And you won't have to worry about the color of the skin on the attorney or the person before the court, the party. You walk out of that courtroom knowing you got a fair trial, that you were heard, you had your day in court. That's why I want to be elected the judge of the 181st District Court.
What types of cases does the 181st hear? Is it a court of all jurisdictions, criminal, civil?
We call it a court of general jurisdiction.
General jurisdiction, yeah.
Criminal cases will be the bulk. Second, I would say, would be family law cases. Judge Board, the previous judge who retired from the 181st, he didn't hear that many family law cases, but you had Judge Estevez of the 251st who heard many, and Judge Anderson in Randall County, County Court at Law 1, and before his retirement, Judge Walker of County Court at Law 2 heard many family law cases for the Randall County side. And then, of course, over in Potter, you had Judge Estevez, you had Judge Sermon at County Court at Law 2, and you had Don Emerson for the longest in the 320th that were hearing the bulk of the Potter family cases. So it kind of, to some degree, insulated the 181st. And Judge Board was able to focus on a heavy criminal caseload. But the court is general jurisdiction, so criminal law, family law. It doesn't do juvenile law. That would not be a norm in that court at all, here in juvenile cases. But you'll have civil disputes, lawsuits over breach of contract, and things of that nature.
So how do the cases get assigned to the courts?
Typically, when those cases are filed with the district clerk, the district clerk's office is responsible for assigning. The criminal cases typically do not initially have a, if you want to call it, assigned or designated court until they are indicted. And then if the felony case, in the case of felonies, is they're indicted, then they get indicted into a particular court. In Randall County, you'd have a B court for the 181st. You have a C after the case number, which would designate a 251st or Judge Estevez. If you had the 47th, which is Dan Schapp currently, who's soon to retire, then you would have that's an A court. So in Randall County, you have either an A, B, or C after the cause number to designate which of the three district courts would receive that case. If it was going to, like a misdemeanor, it's going to go to one of the county court at law courts, that case would then get filed with the county clerk instead of the district clerk, and that's going currently to either Judge Anderson, James Anderson of County Court at Law 1, or Matt Martindale, County Court at Law 2. Over in Potter, of course, you got Judge Walt Weaver of County Court at Law 1 and Matt Hand for County Court at Law 2. So, but the clerk's office is the answer to your question.
So the district clerk just assigns randomly or based on a caseload?
It's the system is designed. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm never worked in the clerk's office. I can't tell you fine details of the operation of the district clerk's office, but I can tell you that they, through their process, assign those cases. It's designed to where you don't have forum shopping.
So if I get sued, I can't pick my court?
You can't pick your judge. That is the idea behind it, is to help try to remove selective forums to where you get to pick and choose which one you get. Now, that doesn't keep judges from voluntarily transferring cases from one court to another, and that part is usually out of the party's hands. That's usually something that happens between the judges and their staff. And, whether that's always a legitimate reason or not a legitimate reason, you don't know. I suspect most of the time.
If somebody knows one of the parties, they might want to transfer it.
Could be.
Because they don't want to be involved in somebody if they know
a judge has the ability to recuse themselves.
Yeah.
They can always just file an order of recusal. And if they've recused themselves, if you want to call it disqualified themselves from hearing the case because of whatever type of conflict or perceived conflict of interest, then that case normally goes to the judge over the administrative region. Used to be Kelly Moore down by Brownfield, and now it's Judge Anna Estevez. She's the administrative judge over this region now.
Well, that kind of makes sense. I wouldn't think a judge would want to take a case if there was any concern that there would be any appearance of favoritism.
I would much rather send a case off to the administrative judge for reassignment than allow the perception that, oh, you used to work close with this attorney. Y'all were in the same firm, or, something like that. Y'all were business partners 30 years ago. Why allow that perception, that rumor mill? Just avoid it entirely. Avoid the potential conflicts of interest or the appearance of impropriety.
Makes sense. So as the judge, then you'll be, not only will you be running the court, but you have to run the administrative part of running the court, right? Hiring and firing of employees.
The judge is responsible for the administrative part of it. As far as how much that judge wants to farm out to their court coordinator, I suppose, judge can do that. I would say, like any other job in that regard, that those beneath you have however much power you delegate to them, so long as it doesn't require the action of an attorney or an actual judge. If it does, then you're going to have to do it.
So you want a competent court coordinator.
Absolutely. You want a good front person that is a professional point of contact, that knows how to treat people like people, that doesn't just show up and treat it as a job, but that they take ownership of that position. They take a desire to work with the public, giving them access to the court. You know, nothing's more frustrating than to show up Friday at 2 o'clock and can't find a judge. If you can't find a judge in a courthouse at 2 o'clock on a Friday, why are they being paid? Why are they being paid till Friday at 5?
Exactly.
I mean, if you can't get to the judge, you don't have access to the court.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard that from many defense attorneys, and that's just because the criminal defense is the bulk of my work currently, though I do civil and family. But I've heard that one, I heard them at a defense group. They said, are you going to be there on Fridays? And I was somewhat shocked that they even asked. They should be able to expect that.
Yeah.
You've got to be there, and you got to be available. It's just like a party wanting an attorney. A man or a woman going through divorce, if they can't reach their attorney, they don't have a lawyer. You know, they don't go to a law firm and hire an attorney so that they're talking to an assistant or a receptionist from there on. You don't take their money and then give them a receptionist from then on. You give them a lawyer. And the public deserves a judge.
Yeah, that makes sense. Crimes aren't committed 8 to 5.
Judge needs to be available 24/7. After hours and weekends and holidays, there's a rotational practice amongst the judges, and that's good. But the point is, every judge should be reachable by someone.
Right.
And someone needs that number of how to get a hold of every judge.
Well, that sounds like you've got it figured out.
Well, I think there's always plenty to learn. I think that any new judge going into office should be receptive to receiving input from the area council. Different people have different ideas. You know, two minds are better than one. And if you don't listen, then you can't get feedback about how to improve, suggestions on making things more efficient. You know, our taxes go up, property taxes, and I don't know about you, Dan, or the public in general, but I like to see people get to keep their money. I like to get to see the man and woman trying to buy their own home and get a fresh start. If they want a paved driveway, let them spend their money on their driveway. I like our town and our community being beautiful, but sometimes you see them going just really extravagant with concrete and trees and grassy areas that are going to require fertilizer and water, and you see people out there in brand new $40,000, $50,000 trucks watering trees in a median, and you're just thinking, is this, at least I'm thinking, is this the best use of our tax dollars? Do our taxes need to be as high as they are? I'm not trying to take any one position. I'm like any other person. I have my opinion on things. My opinions wouldn't matter much as a judge because I'm not there to enforce my opinions. I'm there to enforce the law as it's written, not to legislate from the bench. But I think that as long as you're willing to learn, a judge needs to be firm but compassionate, and I can be that. I've done missions work as far as South Africa, and as close as working with City Church on the north side of Amarillo, delivering meals, walking door to door, and knocking on those doors and handing sacks with apple and sandwich and piece of fried chicken in it. And I think compassion's important, but a judge at times is going to need to be firm too. So I think I can be both of those.
I guess in a campaign, you can't really take positions on issues.
Judges are not supposed to take positions on issues because, just like you could say pro-police. Well, what does that say to the defense bar?
Right.
What does that say to those sitting in jail waiting on a trial? Did you just make a statement that you're going to rule in favor of every police officer that happens to come up. You can be supportive of law enforcement without making a commitment that you're always going to take the side of law enforcement. You know, how can you say today what your position is going to be on something else? You haven't heard the case. And if you've got your mind made up before you've heard the case, well, then you're one of those judges that I was talking about a while ago, one of those that shouldn't be there.
Yep. You want to treat everybody the same.
Absolutely.
That's what it's about.
It is.
Is there any efficiencies that you know of right now that you'd like to bring to the court to make it run more efficiently? You know, we had the problem with Potter County getting hacked. Do you know how that affected the courts, and do they have any procedures in place to keep that from happening again?
Well, I don't know that they've got any procedures in place to keep it from happening again. So I can't speak to that because I don't have access to, say, the Potter County Auditor or Potter County Treasurer's office and how they're running their office. I'm sure that they feel like they're doing the very best job they can and taking all the precautions they can. Potter County had IT staff when this happened. And, you know, when computers get hit, they get hit. We all go out there and we buy our computers antivirus software, whether it's McAfee or Norton, whatever it is. But if computers were foolproof, you wouldn't need antivirus software. But what I know is the way it impacted, I saw this as a practicing court-appointed counsel. That's not all the cases that I handled at that time, but that was a bunch of it. Court-appointed attorneys went through a period of time there when they weren't getting paid. You're still expected to do jail visits and see your clients and visit with folks on the phone and go engage in trials, whatever work was at hand that needed to be done. But your checks quit coming. And I know some of the attorneys were really frustrated and calling, trying to find out when are checks getting cut. And so I personally, my observations were that it affected payroll. It affected courts in not being able to see their dockets, they couldn't get to their electronic data. The DA's office couldn't get to their discovery to talk to you about files or offers. It's like, we can't get to anything. All computers are shut down right now. We're not allowed to connect the computers. And having been an IT person, information technology person for 10 years of my life, I'm a Microsoft certified systems engineer. I have that MCSE, Cisco CCNA, that's a certified networking associate, and a Lucent certified technical expert in ATM, frame relay, and internetworking. Those computer certifications were from about 10 years of my life between being a police officer and being an attorney. What I saw was, in my opinion, it was essentially an attack that disabled Potter County's data capabilities, their digital access. And as a result of that, it basically just handicapped and took everybody down. By everybody, I mean it affected the DA's office, the courts, the payroll. So every department that I interacted with during that time frame, it was basically you just need to go do what you can do and do your best. And it would be like driving in the dark without headlights. You know, you just do your best because you still got to get from here to here. And just do your best. And so it's unfortunate, but it's why I think people should to take a lot of concern and care and thought when they start thinking about electronic versus paper. I have never had a notepad fail me. Now, I've had a pen or a pencil run out of ink or break. I've had computers, when we walk in there and you're on a tight timetable, you need to get to court, you got docket in another 20 minutes. You walk in there thinking you're going to print off something right quick, and you go in there and you turn your computer on, and a little circle sits there and goes around and around and around, and maybe you can't use your computer for 30 minutes. And you just walk out without whatever you need because it won't even come up on the desktop yet. Or it's in the middle of an update. And until it gets done, you know, do not turn off the computer. You get that message. So technology, I'm not saying it's a bad or evil thing. I'm just saying it fails.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
It's got its place, but you can't always depend on it.
That's right.
Should not be dependent upon.
Better have a backup.
Right. Always got to have the paper backup.
I've been reluctant to go to these. There's different vendors that sell law practice management software where you put all your client files on there and cases and related documents. And some of those are cloud-based to where it's out there in the internet. Well, that's fine as long as you got a signal. What happens if you go off to Wellington, Texas, and get out there and you have no signal and you can't get internet? I'm just saying, if you get in certain places, if you don't have Wi-Fi and can't get to the internet, you can't get to your client's files. And so it just makes you think, because if you totally rely upon that, what do you do if you're trying cases from that? What do you do when you're sitting there in the middle of a murder trial and you got a state's witness on the stand and you're cross-examining that witness, and all of a sudden you try to go to that witness's written statement that's a digital document in the cloud, and you hit that key, and instead of being able to go into that document, it just gives you no internet access, no Wi-Fi. Now what? You've got a jury over here watching this trial. You got a judge up there expecting you to ask your next question. Judge, I'm sorry, my computer's updating here. It's going, it's maybe an hour. You better have a backup plan, is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, I think we all depend a little bit too much on technology, and it's getting worse. But is there anything else you'd like to tell the voters as to why they should vote for you as opposed to your opponent in this race?
I'd say look at qualifications. Not who said I'm good, not who said I'm fair, not who said I'm the one that voted to vote for. Look at my qualifications. Look at my candidate's qualifications. If you look at our trial experience, if you look at how many years we've been practicing law and what areas of law we've practiced in. I've had murder trial, robbery, rape, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault of a child. I've dealt with CPS cases, Child Protective Services, juvenile cases, divorce, custody battles, property disputes, lawsuits over contracts, such as somebody wanting to do a gas station, a retail store, and financing falling through, or for one problem or another, and then you end up in a lawsuit over the contract. Which party needs to perform? Is performance excused? And, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't done it, then how are you going to be listening to it? How are you going to be deciding other people's cases if you've never done it? If all you've done is criminal law, or if all you've done is family law, or just a little bit of both, and that's the two main areas this court's going to be hearing, that's going to be a problem. And I would just encourage the voters, don't look for a politician's name. Don't look for who's got the most signs. Don't look for something that has nothing to do with the office. Look for some meat and potatoes, something that actually means something. Go on the Texas State Bar website. Look at a state bar number. That license number on a date or a bar number, mine's 2406-2772. My Oklahoma bar number is 21518. Those are sequentially issued. An earlier number, a lower number, means that attorney was licensed earlier than some other attorney with a higher number. It'll also show license date. It'll also show courts where the person's admitted to practice. So I wouldn't want voters to care about what some judge said about me or a senator, a congressman or woman. Look out there and see what courts I'm licensed to practice in. I think you'll see that I've been admitted to all the federal courts and I'm talking about the United States District Courts for Texas and Oklahoma. That's 7 different federal courts, 2 states of practice. But I'm a native Texan. The Texas Panhandle has been my life, my family's life. people are different. You go to different areas, different states. Cultures are different. Attitudes are different. Their responses to issues are different. I understand the people. I understand farmers and ranchers, mechanics. I just changed transmission and turbochargers and timing set, water pump, starter on a 2012 F-150 that I drive. It's a V6 twin turbocharged EcoBoost. But I didn't have to go spend $80,000 on a new pickup. I spent about $7,000 on parts and did it myself in my driveway. I built my two-story house that I live in. I framed it with my own hands, came home on weekends during law school, and laid the bricks. I've never had a plumber or electrician at that house. My father taught me about hard work and ethics, work ethic. That's what the people deserve. That's what they'll get with me. And I would just say, listen to your own thoughts and feelings. Not what somebody else recommends. Do your research. Get out and vote. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. If you look at voting history, I already know what mine's going to show. I voted Donald Trump twice, and I'd have voted for him a third time. If he runs again, I'll vote for him again. I believe when the man hugged the flag, he meant it. I believe he loved his country, still loves his country. I believe that was one of the most beautiful first families we've ever had in the White House. Not that it ought to be about appearance, but I don't think our First Lady was treated right. She couldn't get her picture on the front page of a magazine to save her life. She's beautiful. But you get somebody else, and they can be not a lot to look at, and them show up on every magazine across the nation. I just hope that the voters will exercise their common sense. Just like they're picking a lawyer, go with your gut. Don't listen to other people's gut. Go with your own. Do your research. I'd ask them go to toddhatterforjudge.com. They'll get a chance to see some pictures of my family, the mission work in South Africa, pictures of me in police uniform. Do your homework. And once you've done that homework, done just a little bit of research, even if it's 20 minutes, I think the choice will be clear. And I will earn their vote, and I will prove the promises that I make. And the main promise is you'll get a fair trial with a judge that's not influenced by money or politics or color of skin.
Well, very good, Todd. We wish you luck in the race, and we appreciate you coming by.
Thank you, Dan. It was a privilege to be here, and it'd be an honor to serve. Thank you.
Thanks.